7 starters from your opening day defense last year graduated, moved on. That caused you more sleepless nights this summer? Have you gone through summers where you've had to replace that many starters?
Yeah, I've been in that position quite a few times, and I think that's what happens when your program gets established with your numbers. You lose 6 to 7 seniors, and if you're recruiting the right kids, they go through the program in 4 or 5 years, and you look to replace them, and that's the way it's built. So, we're going to miss those guys. They were great football players, but we've got guys in the depth that I think are good football players, be as good as those guys when it's all said and done, and that's what you want to get when you're building a program.
You knew, obviously, the depth chart, the reserves that you had waiting in the wings, and this spring you started to piece together this year's defense. Did anybody surprise you this spring with what they were able to do and show you?
Well, Andy McClanagan came on really well this spring. I was really impressed with him. Robert Seal stepping in for Jagarrett Davis. He's where I thought he should be. Lincoln Richards was a big surprise as a freshman. He's one of those outstanding athletes that you don't get every time. He's just a freak of nature as an athlete, and now it's a matter of coaching him up, getting him to do the right things all the time, and giving him game experience so that he, becomes a seasoned vet.
I'll ask you the same thing I asked Kenneth Acker yesterday. Your defense tied the NCAA record last year for most interceptions returned for touchdowns. When you think about Ryan Smith, Brett Hannis, Horace Richardson, J.R. Richardson, all went down for the year with injuries. You ever step back and sort of think how good your secondary could have been last year, or your defense could have been?
Yeah, that was the one thing that really bothered me about what happened last year is we were not a good pass defense. Pass efficiency, we were like 36 in the country, but total pass defense, we were 109th, and that's just unacceptable to me. You have years like that. You don't know why it happens, but what it did is it gave those young kids a chance to get game experience, and Greenbauer was as good as any of those guys late in the year. Shaquille Randolph got to play. It makes you better the following year. The problem you have in coaching is you got to weather that year with all those injuries, and you're going to have mistakes. You're going to have level of play drop off because of that.
Last couple of years, a lot of attention was paid, and rightly so, to Taylor Reed, Cameron Rogers, Jagarrett Davis, guys who've been in your lineup for several years, very productive. And sort of quietly, Randall Joyner snuck up there, finished second on the team in tackles with 93, and is the elder statesman, I guess, of your linebackers this year. Is he sort of the heart and soul of your defense this year?
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about that. He's definitely the leader on the defense. Had a great year last year. Yeah, and I knew he was capable of doing that. He was fortunate that Cameron Rogers got injured early, and he got an opportunity to play. And we always talk about those things that when it's your turn to step up, and we don't expect a drop off. And we preach that from day one in this defense. But Joyner's the guy right now. Great leader. He's a hustle kid. He's everything that we want in the defense. He's a product of coming through the system. I just wish we could have redshirted him somewhere around his freshman or sophomore year, because really he should be a redshirt junior, him and Pope both, but we didn't have the opportunity to do that. Those kids would be unbelievable. The seniors, same thing with Jagarrett and Taylor. They never had a redshirt year. But yeah, Pope's the guy this year.
He, coming out of high school, Randall Joyner was recruited as a safety, very lightly recruited. I think you guys picked him up sort of at the last minute. And he said that he was coming to SMU sort of with a chip on his shoulder. And he's accomplished everything that you've just described. Are you surprised that he's been as effective as he is?
Well, it doesn't really surprise me. The thing with him when we were recruiting him is we had a scholarship open late, and when that happens, you recruit the best available football player, and he was really a good football player in high school. He played running back, played DB, very, very productive high school football player. The problem with recruiting him is he was undersized. He was 5'10", probably at that time 200 pounds. And we thought maybe a safety if he gained the weight, maybe a linebacker, maybe a running back, and he ended up as a linebacker, but he's still the same football player we saw in film. He's a very productive football player.
One of the more heavily discussed topics coming out of spring was Coach Jones announced that Kenneth Acker would get a crack at receiver. His spring workouts got shut down when he had the sports hernia. Do you worry about him taking time away from defense after Coach Jones just said a moment ago that he is still planning to try him on offense?
I'll worry about that when that happens. I think a lot of that depends upon what we're getting out of our receiver core. I don't know what capacity June's going to use him. Obviously, he's our best corner right now. But I've always been one of those guys that at the end of the year, it's about the accomplishments of the team. And if what they need him over wide receiver to increase the offensive production, and we may step back a little bit, but again, I think a lot of it's going to depend upon too of the depth of our corners. If we've got 3 or 4 corners that are not quite as good but are very good players, then that's okay.
Do you lobby to try to keep him on defense? Are you and the other assistant coaches in June's office begging him to stay on your side or pull him over to the other?
Not really. I'm kind of into it for, hey, let's see if we can play him where he's going to be the most productive on the team. I know he's still going to play some defense, whether it be in a nickel package, if that's what happens. I've always went with the fact that, hey, he might have to take 150 snaps playing both ways for us. I don't know. But we'll worry about that when that happens. So, yeah, I just really think, hey, let's do what's best for the team. And, if we're a little bit less at corner, then that's just the way it's going to be.
Before they got hurt last year, you and Coach Odom both had a lot of really positive things to say about J.R. Richardson and Horace Richardson. They're both coming back off of injuries. How do they look to you now?
Well, I think they're where they were at last year at this time. Obviously, they've come back from those knee injuries really well. I'm excited about both of those kids. I thought both of them had a chance to move in with some of that starting rotation last year. I think we've got 2 really quality young corners. If you can look at a positive in that created a redshirt opportunity for them. So we're going to have those kids for a long time, and those are 2 really talented young corners.
A lot of what happens on defense starts up front, whether it's the defensive line generating pressure on the quarterback or just tying up blockers so the linebackers can run free. You graduated 3, really 4 defensive linemen last year if you count Spike in there as almost a starter. Now you've got all new faces on the defensive line. How good is this defensive line, and are they big enough? I mean, you're graduating Margus and Kevin Grenier, who are huge. What's your assessment of the defensive line going into this season?
Well, I think they're going to be just as good. They're going to be a little bit different. Like you said, they're not the big, strong, physical kids that Marcus and Grenier and Pitt were, but you've got Zach Woods, who's an outstanding athlete. He had 18 scholarship offers coming out of high school. Flanagan's really come around for us. Bo Barnes is, he's 6'5", 265. We're a little bit different caliber of D-line. We're faster, we're more athletic than those kids that we've had in the past. We've got more depth. Ely Nabushi, I think, is going to be a great one. Just a matter of some seasoning for him. The young defensive lineman, Zelt Minor, really a quality player. We've got guys in there that I think 3 deep that are going to be really outstanding football players. The thing that we've got to do as coaches, we've got to be patient. It could be game 3 or 4 before these kids really dominate up front, and I've got to do a good job as a coordinator to move them and do some different things with them so that we don't create situations where they got to take on double teams and get pushed and have to play as a physical group.
One of the changes over this offseason has been a change in the rules in terms of the way defensive players target offensive players. How is the rule different, and how does it change what you and your staff teach to your defensive players?
Well, we haven't really taught anything different. I think the main thing in the rule is you can't target a defenseless player and you can't lead with the head, which I'm all for in college football. We've taken these kids, and I think in the last 5 or 6 years with the weight programs and the speed and conditioning programs, we've got these kids where they're super fast, super strong. There's a lot more concussions, and there's going to have to be some give and take to preserve the integrity of the game. And we're really not out there to kill people. We're out there to play physical football. I don't think from what we've always taught it's going to change much. I think more than anything it's going to protect the kids going over the middle. You're going to see a lot less of the concussions and the knockout type injuries. So overall, if you look at the big picture, I think it's a good thing for college football. I just wish they'd take it another step farther, eliminate the cut blocks on the defensive linemen, eliminate all cut blocks on the field when the ball is turned over, and have the same rules that if a defensive player is in possession of the ball, then the same rules apply to the offense.